quite a few ways. Although
my favorite
Stefan
is
would tell
Top
you
Story,
Carousel's
though.
terrible.
Yeah, Carousel's terrible. So is Tiles. I
horrible.
think Top Story is the best one. That's what I say.
Well, clearly that's the only opinion that matters.
That's right.
Let's get going. Today is July 12th, and we are welcoming all of you back to our Ask Some Praxis family. Today we are talking about a topic called managing company news. And we have our general cast of characters. Oh, Todd is not out of office,
Todd's
but
not
we
out of
want him to
office.
be. So
I
we
see
put him
him
on mute, forced to mute. That's how we handle Todd these days. He's got a windmill and everything. He's on vacation. Our agenda. We are going to do a news overview, and then we're going to talk about our out-of-the-box options, organizational news, filtering by site, filtering by managed properties, branding news, digest, and then a few little customization options. So let's do the thing that we have been doing recently, which is to take the maturity model approach for news. And Mark, do you want to talk us through this?
Sure. I was generous on this one. I decided that you can get further up the chain with up the levels with news if you do basic stuff. So I think the sort of level 100 action is, people are just emailing stuff around sort of willy-nilly. A lot of organizations still work this way, believe it or not. You get email that you choose to read or ignore. You don't really know what's authoritative, what is relevant to you. Maybe a level 200 might be something where at least you're getting newsletters, which are aggregating some of that information from multiple departments or teams. Maybe there's a bit of a limitation on who can send a news-like content to the entire organization, and it has to go through some sort of funnel. Somebody has to take care of it for you. Maybe a level 300 might be something like, news-like content is posted somewhere on the intranet or, online somewhere, but isn't necessarily all in one place. It's in various locations. You have to know where, for example, HR would post their information to go and find what HR wants to tell you, as opposed to having a single source, which would be level 400. You have really one landing page, which is ideally your intranet homepage, and that is a place not only to get the current news, but also look at the historical record. We always want to be thinking about new employees, and if somebody came today and the news went out yesterday, they won't be able to see it if it's in email or in some other mechanism. And then finally, level 500, you're probably doing some sort of measurement and doing better, improving how you're sending those messages out, doing things like, what Emily can teach you all about with writing for the web, writing your content so that it is consumable. It's not just a sea of text. It's you get your points across quickly and then let people dive in deeper if it's a piece of news that's interest to them. So again, a little bit generous. That news is not a complex thing, but it's amazing how many organizations don't do it well. So I think there are still some stages that you can go up to up your game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So Emily, SharePoint news. Can you give us a primer?
Absolutely. So for those who are a little bit less familiar, SharePoint News is essentially a SharePoint page with a site column on it called Promoted State. When that is set to the number 2, then it is treated a little bit differently in your environment, and those pages appear in different places. You can create a page to post your own content. You can also grab external links and add them as news links. And then whenever you make an organizational news site, you can also make video news links. So if we pop onto the next slide, you can see those are the 3 different items which we can create. All of those items can then be combined together into automatic or manual news digests. When it comes to where we create our news, we can start this process a couple different places. We can start it at the SharePoint start page, the app bar, site collection homepage, or a news web part. And when it comes to where we see it, although it's called SharePoint News, it appears almost everywhere where you could possibly conceive of needing it. So you can send it in email. Coming soon, that's going to be that full page of a news story. Right now, it is a little thumbnail image with the title and teaser text. You can also email those news digests. We have the news web part, which we can change and control what it surfaces across different site collections. In the SharePoint app bar and start page and mobile app, you're going to see all of your news depending on what you have permissions to. In Microsoft Teams, you can post individual news posts there, or you can add that Teams connector. You can also send those news posts over to Viva Engage. And then last but not least, we also have the Viva Connections dashboard, wherein you can have your different news stories appearing there or have it come into your Viva Connections feed.
Yeah, that is a lot of places that news is surfaced. And then here the info on when that's coming out, right? The full page news.
Yeah, so rollout start for that. Send your full page. So if we have a whole SharePoint page, I have all my beautiful paragraphs, embedded content, and I want that full thing to come to somebody's email. Rollout starting July 2023. So any day now, let's hope. You will be able to do that. Just remember that's a copy of a moment in time. So exercise that with caution.
Right. You should definitely have the right scenario to be sending those full page news emails out so that if it's going to change constantly, you might want to rethink that.
Yeah, none of us are, I don't think any of us are like excited about that one. That seems like a step back.
Yeah, I think it has use cases, but they're very specific. Yeah. So Mark, organizational news.
So organizational news is a way to sort of make some news more specialer than other news. And it's just it's actually a very simple concept. If you think about, you have multiple sites on your intranet or in your tenant, depending on how you're rolling up news. Some sites have more important news than others. In this screenshot, we've got travel, and you notice that the travel news, and when you post news, you get to see there are 2 links with every news story. There's the link that takes you to the site in which that news is contained in, so in this case, travel. And then there's a link that takes you straight to, if you click on the title, it takes you directly to that page. So when you declare a site an organizational news site, the site name is reverse highlighted. So you can see travel looks different than Sayulita, that looks different than Mexico City. And the reason for that is it's an organizational news site. Usually in our real implementations, it's not something like travel. It might be something like company news or news at company name, or I think the example that Microsoft uses is news at Contoso. So it's a little bit of a visual cue that shows people that news story has a little bit more importance than the other ones, and it's a great quick thing that you can do to make news appear and act a little bit more authoritative. That link at the bottom goes to something we did before, and I'm drawing a blank. I clicked on it earlier. Can you remind me, Em?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I'm checking it right now for you. It is
something really useful.
A really exciting.
I'm on bated breath, people.
Well, my first attempt said, well, drum roll, please. It is a link that needs to be updated because it looks like learn.microsoft.com changed the destination. So it is no longer.
We'll fix that link and it'll go to something really helpful and useful.
Everybody wait 1 hour and then try it, and we'll all find out where it's going to go. It'll be great. It'll be fantastic.
If you take the junk off the end, there's some junk on the end that breaks the URL. If you take that junk off, it works.
Yeah, there's just some junk. Move the junk.
Out
So
with the
racing
joke.
Sorry,
into
I asked.
rebrandly
Sorry,
here.
I asked.
Yeah, please.
I had a can of worms sitting over here, and I figured I'd pop it open while everyone was watching.
It's more one of those like peanut brittle things that it's
Yeah.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Oh, all right. That's totally fine. Why don't we move on from this nice slide that has a
Anyway.
mistake on it? Anywho,
You didn't get the
there's,
cool animation though, you know.
there was some notes that you can only have up to 250 organizational news sites, and you use PowerShell, Todd's favorite thing. One line of PowerShell will make a site an organizational news site. All right, let us move on to this slide. Oop, you've had okay, you had builds and I didn't see that. Sorry about that. Emily, understanding the Viva Connections feed.
Yeah, so in our conversation around managing news, one of the top places where this news appears in your Viva Connections feed. So a lot of people ask, well, how do I control what shows in what order in the Viva Connections feed? And the answer is you don't, but you can influence it. So first, let's take a look at what is coming into this feed. So users will only see content they have access to from the below sources. So in SharePoint, you will see they are going to get the org news, the boosted org news, news links, and then other SharePoint news. We're going to get content from Viva Engage, as well as if you make an organizational news site, you get this added feature called a video news link, and those video news link will connect to your stream on SharePoint videos. Now, if we go to the next slide, we can see a little bit about how we can influence that Viva Connections feed. So Mark mentioned those organizational news sites. Not only do they give you a user interface of declarative news, they give you those added features of boosting the news and more superpowers when it comes to promotion in the feed. You can also use things like audience targeting. So if we have a bunch of news stories about a Cincinnati office, we can focus those on only that location. So maybe some people over in Canada don't see that content. Because those video news links come from organizational news sites, those will also be very powerful content that is promoted. And then again, of course, you want to inspire conversations and encourage people to talk in Viva Engage to have those posts come into your feed with the news as well.
Cool. All right, so I think our next topic then is going to be to talk about filtering news. So now we're going to try to curate what we've got. So we've got all the news, and now we're going to try to curate it in some way, shape, or form. So using that news web part, I think we have some options.
Yeah, so the first one of presenting our news on a SharePoint site, of course, is our beautiful news web part that we get. You can see in our choices for news source, we can always say this site, all sites in the hub, select sites, or you can go along with more the way that we are seeing the news in SharePoint Start Page, SharePoint App Bar, and Viva Connections feed, where it is recommended for current user. So you can start your filtering here by just only showing a subset of sites in some areas. So for example, if you have a human resources hub site and a bunch of different associated sites in that HR area, maybe you only want to show that content on the HR homepage. Now, just be careful for all sites in this hub. If you have a hub site and then an associated hub site, that next tier of sites associated to the associated hub site don't automatically roll up. So that's a situation where you're going to want to manually select all sites. Really common scenario when you're setting up your news web part on your intranet homepage, you're probably going to manually select all of the sites that fall inside your entire intranet architecture.
Cool. And we also have some layouts here on this page. So obviously, looks like you have 6 different ways that you can sort of make that news appear. And those are sort of the out-of-the-box ways those things can show up. That's actually quite a few ways, although
My favorite
Stefan
is
would tell
Top
you
Story,
carousel's
though.
terrible.
Yeah, carousel's terrible. So is tiles.
Sounds
I think Top Story is the best one. That's what I say.
Well, clearly that's the only opinion that matters.
That's right.
All right, let's move on then to filtering by a managed property and news. Mark?
Okay. So Emily showed that you can filter with, you know, which sites do you actually want to have the news come from. You can actually filter by any managed property that is available as a site column in the site pages library. So for example, if you had added a column that's something like, show on homepage, and it's a yes or no column, you could say, well, only show the news post where that box has been checked. And we've done that in several cases for clients because there's maybe HR has some news that they want to have on their site, but then there's some stuff that they want to push to the homepage. In this example, I'm just showing a filter based on title, which is not very interesting, but title contains library, and more likely it's going to be, as we say on the slide, something like news category or show on homepage or something like that. And then that applies it applies that filter to the news stories that are shown. So you can create rather complex compound filters. You can have more than one managed property filter, for example. So it says library and it says something else, or it's from a particular site. So you can pretty tightly filter down what news you want to show on any page that uses the news web part. So keep in mind that the news web part doesn't have to just live in the home pages of the hub site or a homepage of a site itself. You could have a news web part in any page because it's just a web part.
Right, and so that could be powerful to use it in different ways. I love Krista's comment in the chat. She was saying she used created an expiration date column and then filtered based on that date being greater than today. So that's Perfect. Exactly the point. That's that you're giving a more curated experience by using the power of the managed properties in search. So that is an excellent example. All right, back to you. And your expertise in all of these things news related, branding a News Digest letter.
So one of the other things that we think about when we're talking about managing our news is there's maybe a subset of that content you want to highlight and promote and deliver to your end users, and maybe you want to send that over in their inbox. Now, there is the automatic News Digest, and the Auto News Digest does give you the ability to set a logo image, navigation bar color, text and icon color, and accent color. For the life of me, I do not know why the manual News Digest doesn't also grab this information, but it doesn't. So it looks like what we have below. So if you want to send on behalf of another email or make it look a little bit less Microsofty and a little bit more relevant to your organization, I recommend making your manual News Digest, sending it to yourself, and then just forwarding that along. Essentially what it is just a table with different images and hyperlinks in it. So you can take out that Microsoft and SharePoint icons in the top and make it feel a little bit more like your company's look and feel.
Yeah, so it's just an HTML email, essentially, although you want to be careful because if your users aren't using although that's rare these days, but if your users aren't using an email client that supports, HTML, that's going to be that's not going to come through. So as a non-technical person, maybe asking that question of your IT department, hey, do we have users who don't have the ability to see HTML emails, is probably important.
Yeah, actually, and one other thing to mention, this is Emily sending a News Digest manually, but the automatic ones that send news to people, hey, you may not have seen these news stories, they come from an email address at Microsoft. I can't remember exactly which one it is. We've had several clients where they actually stamp those emails with, this looks suspicious because it's coming in to Exchange from outside. So you want to make sure that you build exceptions into Exchange for those email addresses so that people are okay with clicking on this stuff and they don't think you're just testing them with, a fake phishing message.
That's a really good point, because you train them not to, and then you put these, and then these labels get on there automatically, and you're kind of, yeah, exactly. All right, I think we're moving on to Derek. You're going to talk about doing PnP Modern Search, which is kind of like our favorite tool these days.
It is. I am as much as we are a fan of the maturity model, I am a huge fan of the PnP Modern Search web part. It is like my favorite little Swiss Army knife.
It can be both, right? We can like both.
Oh, we could absolutely like both. I have a particular love for PnP Modern Search, but I was thinking about this as I was pulling together the slides, and I kind of feel like specifically for news, PnP Modern Search is one of those, just because you can doesn't mean you should. It has to have a very specific use case. Because you need to roll your own here. Like you need to write the entire query to pull the right content types with the right promoted states from the right sites. But as I was thinking about the different use cases that I've used this for, one of them was to pull data based specifically on a user's profile, which, say their department, if you want to pull department news, or if you want to pull their location. So say you just want news, they have in their AD profile, they have the, Boston location, and you can have news tagged to a very specific location. So you can start to create a really tailored news experience for them using that. This image uses a policy center example. So, but you can also use this to create, say, a news archive where you pull back all the news and you can start to search and you can refine and you can do keyword searching. You can also do date range based searches. So you can search for, the current week or this month or this year and start to be very specific and granular with that kind of content. You can also pull information. Emily was talking about the hubs. And that child hub not pulling up. You can actually, if you have the hub IDs, you can create a query that will let you do that. And just generally pull back more complex queries than you can get with the first party web parts. The other super cool thing that you can do is you can also create custom visualizations. And with the custom visualizations, you can use either handlebars to generate basically your own HTML and CSS to pull back the results, or you could use the adaptive card framework to create a user interface to share your news. If one of the 5, I'm not going to count the carousel, out of the box visualizations don't work for you.
Well said.
No carousels.
No carousels. No
Carousel
carousels
bad.
where the news. No news was
Yeah.
harmed. All right, so that's a great kind of segue with a custom visualization part, because as we can kind of see from this picture here, news coming back with like a title and a summary like that is, it's not visually super appealing. So the ability to maybe create your own custom visualizations, here's a couple of screenshots from a talk that Stefan Bauer and I did together about creating just our work. It was about our workflow, but he decided to create a couple of visualizations of cards. So these could be kind of like really fancy card layouts that you might want to have for your news. And so with the combination of the PnP Modern Search and your own HTML handlebars template with CSS, you could do something even at this level right in PnP Modern Search. Of course, you could also then build your own SharePoint framework news web part and then use that instead of the out-of-the-box news web part and sort of duplicate some of that functionality and or code it specifically to how you want to bring back your news for whatever that custom scenario is. But I think probably the combination of the PnP search web parts plus a handlebars template with your own CSS in it could give you a really, really robust visualization and solution for custom news. So that is a way that my work can actually be relevant here, since we just talked about out of the box pretty much all day long, and now I'm happy. Hey, we talked about PowerShell too, Todd. So you're happy.
I was just gonna say,
PowerShell.
We didn't let Todd say it though.
No, of course not. Because why? Wait, why are you not still on mute? No. All right. All right. So here's some resources that we have. We do have some extra time though. So does anybody have any like cool news solutions that they put together, or questions about this topic, or maybe questions about any other topic? Because we have time.
Maybe,
so
ask some praxis something about news.
Yeah, we absolutely can. We can field those now. If you want to come off mute or put it in the chat, feel free. So some of the resources we have, that organizational news link, distributing corporate news, is on the top there. And another one from Microsoft Learn on creating organizational news sites. So that's going to tell you about that PowerShell, that line of PowerShell you need. Another one on the crawled and managed properties Those are important. And then a couple of links for PnP Modern Search. So if you want to get going with that, those two links can get you started there.
I have something that I could talk about here. Something that we often run into, I think, when we're talking to organizations about news is that they often will tell us, oh, we don't have any news. You know, it just doesn't exist. So let's get rid of that news web part on our whatever marketing site or our HR site or whatever. You know, they say, nope, we don't do news. And then within a week or two, they say, now, how are we going to send our newsletters out? And sometimes it's just mind-boggling. I guess we used a different word. So I think actually one of the hardest things with news is to get people to think about what news is, what stuff they communicate to the organization that is, I guess, newsworthy,
Right.
and what the benefit is of having a centralized location where those news stories exist, where you have the history, again, great for new employees. You can fix problems. So, you know, somebody says, oh, that, you know, third line in the fourth paragraph is actually wrong. You can fix it, or an embarrassing spelling mistake or something like that. So I think the tricky part is not necessarily the technology. It's talking through why news is good. I thought news was really dumb when I first saw it, to be honest. So you know, I can say I went through that journey too. And I think it's one of the most powerful things that we build into the intranets that we build, and it really brings communication to the fore on that intranet homepage.
For sure. Caleb had a question. Caleb.
Hey, so you guys were talking about the handlebars configuration of the PnP search. I would love to see some praxis event where you all went into more depth in that, because what little I've dabbled with that, I have not had great success with it, and I thought I knew handlebars. So.
It takes some special love and experience. Yeah, I will.
I will. Yeah, I agree with that, and I do feel that the better way to do it. No, he's not. I also find that it is easier to work with those handlebars templates if I externalize them too. So I put them in Visual Studio Code as a file, and then I reference them using the link. And that actually makes things a little bit easier. So we could definitely talk through that. Greg asked if we can change the email address from where it's coming from, corporate communications. Todd, did you answer this? You're allowed to come off mute.
Don't let him.
Yes, I put the link, but I stole Emily's link, and so it was she could.
All right.
Okay. No, you can't change that email address though. That was the other question.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it comes from again, I can't remember it. Emily, do you remember? It's an address at Microsoft.
No.
That
I think we
don't have any control over.
Or unsubscribed from them all.
Because
I don't like them.
You can take the back ways around approach of sending it to yourself and then editing that email and sending it as well.
Sure, but that news you might have missed one comes from a Microsoft email address, and we don't have any control over that.
I wish there was somebody from Microsoft on your call who could listen to us saying we really, really need that.
Well, type it in the chat, because apparently Jason sees it if it's in the chat, although he's on the Power BI team, so I don't know how much that's going to help us.
Oh, he'll fix it, though. He works at Microsoft. That's the way it works, right? If we have somebody from Microsoft
type that in the chat
call,
right now.
It gets
so
fixed.
Jason Himmelstein is going to, we just heard. We'll paste that in the chat and make sure we assign that.
Anything we bring up on these calls immediately gets fixed.
Exactly. That's how that works. Exactly. Oh, I love it, Rob. Rob just chat about Jason fixes everything. Perfect. Awesome. All right. Well, since we're at the top of the hour, let's wrap it up. So July 26th, we'll be back again. We're going to talk about the changes to the home and start experiences. So that should be interesting. we're out and about. See us live. Derek will be at 365 EduCon in Seattle, and that's towards the end of August. Todd and Mark will be at CEF in Stockholm. That's going to be really fun. Collab Days New England, yay! That's our conference in New England area. That's a free event that will be happening October 21st. We are just in the final stages of speaker selection, so we will be opening up registration shortly. So you will hear more about that, and if you follow us on the interwebs and here on As Praxis. We also will be announcing 365 EduCon Chicago, which is end of October, beginning of November. Derek and I will be there. That just came in hot today. So again, thanks everybody for joining us. Hope to see you in 2 weeks at our next Ask Praxis, and take care. Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask Praxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.